It's morning in America. Good morning. Good morning. More about Heraclitus of Ephesus in the last segment, if you're interested in that. Meantime, A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an important new book out by our friend Zuhdi Jasser, Dr. M. Zuhdi Jasser. Good morning, Zuhdi.
Good morning, Bill. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
The book is actually published tomorrow. Is that right?
Yes, it'll be available tomorrow.
Great. Where are you doing a big tour? I hope so.
Yeah, we are. We're starting with you, but we'll be on Hannity this evening and going around the country talking about it over the next few weeks.
Great. Well, I asked for this first, so thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to hear from you. You know, we need to have this conversation. We've been talking about economics, the presidential race, a lot of domestic issues. Meanwhile, things are not still on the front of Islamism, correct?
Correct. We're still sorely missing any type of focus or policy and doctrine in the Middle East and even domestically. And our counterterrorism programs have remained a whack-a-mole program. And, you know, in this book, I basically lay out my personal narrative and lay out how since 9/11, while President Bush got it right about the freedom agenda, we have to follow through. Iraq and Afghanistan were simply one step in that, and we're not going to. This is the most important conflict of the 21st century, and a quarter of the world's population is Muslims. So unless Muslims can get this battle with modernity and freedom and enlightenment and coming to terms with reason and natural law, until we understand that this is a battle, we're going to continue to lose, and we see a lot of countries being lost from secular fascism to on their way to Islamism, and we're missing an action in that battle.
I want to leave time for people to call in and talk to you, so we'll keep you 2 segments, and we want to have you back, too, because even that isn't enough time. And our guest is Zuhdi Jasser, Jasser, if you're ordering the book, and the book is A Battle for the Soul of Islam. Let me go to the heart of what may be the disagreement that I think a lot of our listeners will have with you, at least prima facie, till they hear from you, and that is about the nature of Islam. A lot of people think the problem is Islam. You believe it is not. You believe it's political Islam or Islamism, if I understand you correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think I would meet them halfway on that and say that I'm not one of the deniers. I'm not an apologist. I have all my life felt that we have some major belief problems, that we have not separated mosque and state. I sort of look at Islam to be at the time where Christianity was prior to the American Revolution and during the Enlightenment and Reform movement. That was quite a bloody time in Christian history, with the 30 Years' War and 100 Years' War, and it took a while until we in the West got that right, and I think Islam is in that same convulsion right now. And, how Muslims look at that in the book. And one of the last chapters, I talk about how we can look at our scriptures through a modern lens, and there are some passages and ideas that we definitely have to deal with that look to be very militant and can be and are misinterpreted and exploited by radicals. But what I do is I think it's important for people to realize that a lot of who I am as a Muslim, and the reason I served in the Navy and my family values and why I'm a physician and my conservative values and morals and ethics were all established long before I became even close to being an expert in Quranic scripture. So it's going to be the lay Muslims that win this battle against the clerics and the imams that are currently the problem.
How many are there of you? I've told you this story. It's kind of a joke, not funny, but people meet me and they say, oh, well, you need to have someone on who thinks differently, and that's Zuhdi Jasser. There are, 1.3 billion Muslims in the world? Is that right?
Yeah.
Or more? And you're the name that keeps coming up. How much company do you have in your view?
Well, I mean, I tap into my experience. I think the vast majority of Muslims I know came here for the same reasons. We could practice our faith more freely in America than we could anywhere else in the world. So part of the book is about legacy and challenging Muslims, that silent majority, just like in Germany. The silent majority of Germans did not support the Nazis and were against Hitler and the regime there, but they didn't speak out. They didn't make sure the Holocaust didn't happen. It ended up happening.
Right.
This is the problem, is that the silent majority of Muslims need to start thinking about what our legacy is for our children. And that's why I end the book with a letter to my children, because if we don't wake up for this battle against Islamism and political Islam and the concept of the Islamic State, our children will not be able to find an intellectual compatibility between Western society and Islam.
The author is Zuhdi Jasser, Jasser. The book is A Battle for the Soul of Islam. You mentioned your biography, but briefly walk us through it. I think it'd be of great interest to the audience. Where were you born? Where'd you grow up? Your career, your military service, so on. Please.
Yeah, my parents came from Syria. They escaped the regime there, and I was born in Ohio, native of Wisconsin. Went to public school in Wisconsin on a Navy scholarship through medical school, and then served in the Navy for 11 years. My tours included the USS El Paso, serving in Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, and my last tour was as a physician to Congress. And, I thought I had achieved the peak of the American dream, serving as a physician to the 535 members of Congress and Supreme Court justices. And then after 9/11, I had left to, before 9/11, I joined my father in private practice in Arizona. And then we formed the American Islamic Forum for Democracy after 9/11, realizing that only Muslims could solve this. And since then, it's been a growing platform to build on my own history and success and love of America, to give back to not only America but the world, that we have a large task ahead of us to defeat these ideas.
We're going to open up phone lines now, folks, 866-680-6464 if you want to talk to Zuhdi Jasser. Part of that biography, Zuhdi, tell us about the kind of encouragement you get. I think we'd love to know that you have a fair amount of company, and then a little bit tell us about some of the other stuff you get. We understand you get constant threats and angry things from the Islamists.
Yeah, last year, I gave testimony to Chairman King's Homeland Security Committee.
King,
after
right?
After that, we had a number of Muslims join us in our American Islamic Leadership Coalition that includes almost 30 different authors and leaders of organizations in Canada and the U.S. that are all doing the same yeoman's work. And it's not just me, but there's a lot of us that need to be given platforms so that America knows it's not just the petro-dollar-supported Islamist groups like CARE and Islamic Society of North America and others. But, the other reason there aren't that many speaking out yet is because we get pushback. I talked about the pushback I got even before 9/11 when I was in college fighting against the Muslim Student Association and their attempt to monopolize Muslim voices on campus, and the Islamic Society of North America, how I went to a large convention they had in Indiana where I presented a medical paper and heard them basically give a keynote saying that they wanted to replace the Constitution with the Quran. And I went in front of 15,000 Muslims in 1995 and said, this is sedition. This is not American, and you guys are free to disagree with policy.
Wow.
But basically saying this was my battle back in the 90s. And that's why, battle for the soul of Islam is people realize that I'm not just a post-9/11 activist. This has been my battle for my whole life.
It sure has. And by the way, I would tell the audience that his whole life is the subject of a brief essay I have in the Book of Man, where Zuhdi Jasser is one of the men profiled as a role model for young people. And it was a delight and pleasure to see you in there. And we love seeing your new book, Battle for the Soul of Islam. Zuhdi, what about the children? You end with a letter to your children. What is the status now? What are young Islamic children being taught? Most people see these schools, Islamic schools and academies around the country. Are most of these, quote, safe environments for kids or not?
Well, here's the crux, Bill. They're not. Most of these places are not teaching, kids to go strap bombs around themselves. But what they're teaching is that America is not theirs. America is against Islam. They need to circle the wagons and be afraid of American hate and victimization of Muslims, etc. So what happens is it teaches this mindset that they're living as visitors in this country. Even something as simple as commemorating 9/11, they'll tell Muslim high school kids to, go commemorate with Americans because this was a tragedy that happened to them. So it's us versus them. And that separatism creates a rupture in their soul so that in the future when they start to become and get into war like Nidal Hassan, the psychiatrist that was an army major, he ended up going south, not because of Imam al-Awlaki, who ultimately made him militant, but because because of the foundational soil that was tilled by these schools that tell them that they are not American, that this is an anti-Islamic country, etc. And this is why we have to grab them early, and that's what our Muslim Liberty Project is about. And really, this whole story is about, teaching our kids early on that their identity is American first and everything else second.
Got it. Zuhdi Jasser is our guest. He'll stay with us another segment. You can talk to him. We have callers on the line. Room for a couple more. 866-680-6464. The book is A Battle for the Soul of Islam. The author is Zuhdi Jasser. Stay with us. I'm going to depart from what I wanted to do, which is ask Zuhdi Jasser a couple more questions. Zuhdi Jasser, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, is the author of A Battle for the Soul of Islam, an American Muslim patriot's fight to save his faith. And I might add, in his country, he's a fervent patriot. I wanted to ask him a couple more questions, but I have two questions, which I think, Zuhdi, this is the very beginning of your book tour. We're honored that you chose us. But these are the questions I think you're going to get. And so you'll be all over the place, and you're in friendly territory here, as you know. Let's start with these questions, which I think you will hear everywhere you go. Let's go to Tom in Texas. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you for having me on the air.
Sure.
My first thought is that the mental image of God, there are so many, and we have killed so many of each other because of our different images of God. I've had about enough of it. I'm a true Texan. I'm a true American. But let me tell you something. I'm one of these people that follow this stuff real carefully, and nobody on the Islamic side of the equation has ever given me convincing information or convincing heartfelt thought that they're the majority. I only see facts and figures that tell me that the radicals really are the majority.
All right, Tom, I'm going to cut you there because I want time for other callers and for Zuhdi to respond. Zuhdi, he's convinced most Muslims are not moderate.
Well, this is a battle, and I think he's right in that we've been silent. And, I think Americans like him need to challenge their local Muslim leadership, national leadership, and the political correctness environment where Muslims are simply the victims and have been given a pass by a lot of the mainstream legacy media. I think that they need to be challenged on that and no longer given a pass and start lighting a fire under their feet. And that's what this book is about, to light a fire under the feet of American Muslims to no longer take their freedoms for granted and say that part of the price we have to pay for living in a country like America is beginning to reform the ideas that we take for granted that so far the Islamist leadership in our communities has exploited against this country. And that these organizations are a liability and not a benefit to them.
Well, we'll be interested, and we want to have you back. I just say that now, just a bookmark here, but because we know you're going to get some nasty response. But I'm really interested if there's a groundswell of support. People say, yes, that's who we are. We're like Zuhdi. We love America. We're part of this country. That's what I want to see. Mike, you're in Monroe, Michigan. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know where Zuhdi stands on Sharia law in America, whether or not there's any aspect of it that he believes should be used in the courtroom or in the community.
What place should Sharia law have in American communities?
Well, again, this book talks about the fact that Sharia, it might have a place personally in my home, but we are actually working against any implementation of Sharia or segmenting it out into any state or federal role, and that this country's legal system should take precedence at all times. And Sharia is the instrument of political Islam. It's how the clerics take control, and ultimately, until Muslims can say we don't, and that's why most of our families are here. We're in America because we wanted to escape the clerics pushing Sharia on us, and it's not Sharia or Islam if the government is making us do it or if the local mosque is making us do it, and that's the battle. Is that we want to live under God, not under Islam.
Is there is there a battle? Are there real attempts to make implement Sharia in American communities, particularly where there's a large Muslim population?
Well, in various arbitration systems, and in Britain, for example, there's 82 functioning Sharia courts. In America, there are many imams that are already trying to. They have their own arbitration systems and basically will function as a Sharia court. So there are examples out there, and if we don't cut it off early and give Muslims the leadership to say that you can't do that in a country based in secular system and a single law system, then it will become an instrument to separate Muslims out of the general legal system. And yes, that might be part of freedom, but actually, many American Muslims, especially women, for example, that are oppressed in these systems, don't know that they have other options.
Right. Zuhdi, we're going to have to let you go. Thank you for beginning your tour here. We'll be watching you. We'll see you on Hannity tonight. We'll happy to announce that. Other shows you want to mention real quick?
I'll be on Fox and Friends tomorrow morning, and we will. Our website will be
great
update. Thank you so much for the attribution on the back of the book. Also, Bill, it was fantastic.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome, and come back. We want to hear how it goes. We do want to hear what kind of reaction you get, and maybe there are those those 500,000 or million Muslims who are with you. We want to know that. Thanks, Zuhdi. Congratulations.
Anytime, Bill. Thank you.
A Battle for the Soul of Islam, Zuhdi Jasser, Jasser. We'll be back with Robbie George.